In a city where power often silenced the weak, a notorious mafia boss faced a battle no bribes or threats could win. His young son lay in a hospital bed, fading despite the efforts of 100 of the country's most celebrated doctors. Just when hope seemed lost, whispers began about an unexpected savior, a young black woman, the brilliant daughter of the hospital's cleaning lady. Nobody in power believed she could be of any help. But as the boy's life slipped away, the woman stepped forward with an unconventional idea, forcing everyone to wonder, could the answer come from the person they'd dismissed the most? The story begins in the heart of a bustling metropolis, where the skyline sparkled with wealth while the streets below carried whispers of corruption. At the top of that world stood Victor Leone, a man feared as much as he was respected, a powerful mafia boss whose name commanded silence in the city's hospitals, police precincts, and courts. When his 8-year-old son, Luca, suddenly collapsed during a lavish party, the entire Leone empire was thrown into chaos. Within hours, Luca was surrounded by the best doctors money could buy. Private jets ferried specialists from across the globe. Machines beeped, needles pierced, but Luca's condition only worsened. It wasn't just an illness. It was a mystery no one could solve. Among the staff at the hospital was Miriam Johnson, a 24-year-old medical researcher finishing her residency. Miriam's mother had worked as a cleaning lady in that very hospital for over 2 decades. Growing up in the shadow of polished floors and hushed hallways, Miriam had seen how often people like her mother were overlooked, and how brilliance usually came from unexpected places. As Luca's condition deteriorated, so did the patience of Victor Leone. The mafia boss, a man used to bending the world to his will, now sat helplessly by his son's bedside. His fury lashed out at the doctors, demanding answers they didn't have. Meanwhile, Miriam quietly reviewed Luca's charts during her breaks. She noticed a strange pattern, an overlooked detail in his blood work that didn't fit any standard diagnosis. Her instincts told her she was on to something. But in a world where wealth and prejudice often decided who got heard, would anyone listen to the young black daughter of a cleaning lady? Days turned into weeks. The hospital had become a fortress, with Victor's men guarding every entrance. Media trucks lined the street outside, reporting on every rumor. At the same time, politicians and business leaders secretly hoped for the boy's recovery, if only to stay in the mafia boss's good graces. Inside, the tension was suffocating. Each failed treatment deepened the quiet despair in the ward. Miriam watched as seasoned doctors, draped in prestige, repeated the same tests and treatments over and over again. None were willing to deviate from protocol. None seemed to notice or wanted to acknowledge the subtle irregularities Miriam had flagged in her notes. Miriam's own path to medicine had been marked by constant reminders of what society expected from her. Professors underestimated her abilities. Patients sometimes questioned her authority. Even in the hospital where she worked, her recommendations were often overlooked in meetings. Yet her fascination with rare metabolic disorders had given her an eye for patterns others missed. Late one night, as the monitors in Luca's room beeped steadily but weakly, Miriam approached the head physician. With carefully chosen words, she presented her theory. Luca's symptoms weren't caused by an infection or a genetic disease, but by a rare reaction to a common preservative in the medications being administered. The doctor listened politely but dismissed her. He couldn't risk his reputation on an unproven hypothesis from a junior researcher. Frustrated but undeterred, Miriam turned to her mother for support. Her mother, who had spent years cleaning the hospital's floors and overhearing the fears and hopes of countless families, told her, "If you know what's right, keep pushing. Lives don't wait for permission." The next day, Miriam decided to test a small sample of Luca's blood in the research lab. Her findings confirmed her suspicion. His immune system was shutting down because of a severe allergic reaction to one of the treatments prescribed by the prestigious doctors. When Miriam presented her data, the room of white-coated experts fell silent. Some scoffed, others looked uncomfortable. Victor Leone, desperate and angry, demanded proof. Against the backdrop of decades of systemic bias and the weight of the boy's failing heartbeat, Miriam faced a wall of resistance. Would her discovery be dismissed as the hopeful theory of an inexperienced outsider? Or would the truth finally break through the barriers of prejudice? On a stormy evening, Luca's condition plummeted. His heart rate slowed to dangerous levels, alarms blaring in the intensive care unit. The lead doctors prepared to try yet another invasive procedure, one that could have pushed the boy past the point of recovery. Miriam, clutching her lab reports, stepped into the tense room. The staff turned to her as if she were an intruder. Victor's piercing gaze fell on her. For a moment, the room felt like a courtroom, with her as the accused. But as she explained, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. She laid out the evidence, the pattern in Luca's blood tests, the timeline of his decline after each dose of the medication, the rare but documented cases in medical literature. The head physician hesitated, torn between pride and the possibility that the young woman was right. Victor's voice cut through the room, low, dangerous, but laced with the rawness of a desperate father. Do it. Under Miriam's guidance, the team immediately stopped the suspect medication and administered the antidote. For hours, they monitored Luca as his body fought to recover. The storm outside mirrored the storm within the hospital. Nurses whispered prayers. Victor stood in silence, staring at his son. Then, in the early hours of the morning, the monitors beeped with a steadier rhythm. Luca's color returned, his breathing strengthened. The boy who had been slipping away began to stabilize. For the first time in weeks, the hardened mafia boss let tears fall, not from fear, but from the fragile hope that his son would live. News of Luca's recovery spread quickly, but so did the story of the young black researcher who had outsmarted 100 doctors. Media outlets swarmed the hospital, eager to paint the tale as a dramatic twist. The cleaning lady's daughter saves the mafia prince. Yet beneath the headlines, a more profound truth lay. Miriam's success was not a miracle born of luck, but the result of expertise, perseverance, and the courage to speak up despite systemic barriers. For years, she had been overlooked because of her background, her gender, and her race. Now the world saw what it had almost lost because of those prejudices. Victor Leone, a man who had built an empire on intimidation, approached Miriam quietly before leaving the hospital with his recovering son. In a rare display of humility, he thanked her, not with promises of wealth or protection, but with a simple acknowledgement of her worth. "You saved my boy," he said. No one else could. The hospital administration faced tough questions. How had they ignored the insights of one of their own? Why had it taken so long to consider her findings? The incident sparked conversations across the medical community about the biases that often cloud judgment and lead to costly consequences. Miriam, though celebrated in the media, returned to her work with quiet determination. She knew that for every story like Luca's, there were countless others where voices like hers were never heard. As the credits of the story roll in the minds of viewers, they're left with an unsettling but necessary question. How many breakthroughs, how many lives, have been delayed or lost because society failed to listen to those it underestimated? Prejudice isn't just a moral failure, it's a barrier to progress, innovation, and sometimes survival. This story reminds us that brilliance knows no boundaries of class or color, and that listening to the unheard can change and even save lives.